Right, folks, you're welcome to A-level computer science. And of interest, here we want to look at database management software, data definition language, and data manipulation language. Things that we are going to be targeting are explaining the limitations of the file-based approach, also looking at relational databases, how they overcome the limitations that we find in file database approach, also designing the ER or entity relation diagrams, database normalization from first normal form all the way to third normal form. We also want to look at the purpose and features of database management system, as well as the interpretation of standard query language, data definition language, and data manipulation language statements. Also in detail here, the limitations of the file-based approach. A file-based system stores data in separate files without centralized control. Now, there are going to be effects or limitation of this approach, which are data redundancy. In other words, there's a lot of repetition, inconsistencies. In other words, we are saying data it exists in different forms where it's supposed to mean exactly the same thing. We have poor data integrity. In other words, there is no proper control as to who has modified this part of data or which changes have been made. There's no enforcement of relations. In other words, if there are connections between data, especially with primary key, foreign key, those things are supposed to link tables so that we can easily sift or read through data. We also want to limit we want to get rid of the limitations of our security. In other words, there should be control of who has access to which type of data. There's also difficulty in data sharing if we are using the file-based approach. Also is program data dependence. Now, a relational database, when we talk of relational database, here data is stored in a tabular form or their relations. Normally, we use primary and foreign keys to establish relations or connection between tables. I will also make use of a basic language which is called SQL to try and retrieve or to modify data, you name it. We also enforce integrity rules. Now, the entity relation diagrams or ER, these are used to model a database structure visually. Now, things that we might find within the ER diagrams, these are entities which are represented by rectangular features. We also have attributes which are oval in shape, relations, they are diamond, and also cardinality to say when we look at relations between two entities, is it a one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-one? Then when we talk of normalization, we are trying to eliminate redundancy and dependence. Now, in the first normal form, what we'll be interested in is getting rid of our repeating groups or atomic fields. Here we are saying we have more than two values being stored within the same field. Then in second normal form, our interest is to eliminate a partial dependence on a composite key. Then finally, third normal form, here we are trying to get rid of transitive dependencies. Now, the database management system or DBMS, this is a software that we use to perform manipulations on data. It's creation, management, and interaction with the database. So that is the purpose of that particular software. And this software, it addresses file-based limitations by having centralized control. In other words, all the data is stored within a common point where if you do a manipulation or an update on data, I mean, it's visible across board. Then we also don't have data dependence. In other words, data becomes independent. We've improved security and integrity, concurrence control. We don't have multiple users, making changes, which leads to inconsistencies within the data itself. Then also there's the issue of backup and recovery, and multiple user access is also improved by the DBMS. Now, the tools and features that we find within the DBMS, we talk of query processors, which help us retrieve or read through data within our database. We also have data dictionaries, security manager, transaction manager, backup utilities, and report generators. They are found within our DBMS. Then when we talk of standard query language that we use to read through or perform changes on our database, we have DDL, which is a data definition language. This is used to define database structure. In other words, we can create, alter, or drop a database. Then we move on to DML, which is data manipulation language. Here we are interested in performing changes on existing data within our table. These changes might involve insertion, selection, updates, or deletion of data within our database. Now, I'm going to be walking you through the 10 examples that we have to do with database DBMS file system and the differences that we find between these two. Thank you, folks.